As Sorka mentioned, I'm actually from Northern Ireland, if you can't tell by my accent. I am also from a HT family here based in Newcastle. And I've also had the privilege of moving to London to work in the University College London in the Huntington Disease Centre there in a quite fantastic multidisciplinary clinic and specialist care for Huntington's disease. And some of my inspirational supervisors, Ed Wild and Sarah Tabrizi. So seeing kind of coming from less provisions for Huntington's care and really knowing what that feels like as a family member with a father that has Huntington's disease, and seeing kind of a vision of what could be for the care in Northern Ireland. And I think it's amazing that we're doing a joint, an all-Ireland kind of event, because I think when it comes to Huntington's disease, I think United Ireland is not controversial at all. So, so I know it's not usual to thank people at the start of the talks, but I really want to thank everyone here, because it's nice to see so many healthcare professionals that want to learn about Huntington's disease. As I said, from a family member, when as Sorka mentioned in her introduction, you do get that feeling of bitterness when you talk to healthcare professionals that don't get what the disease is, don't understand the kind of psychiatric side of things, and it is very frustrating to families. So it's amazing to see and this kind of event be organised and see you all here. So thank you from the start. Sorka mentioned about this thing called chorea. This is a very extreme case of chorea, and kind of see these jerky, writhing, involuntary movements, and this is quite an extreme case. Most cases are not as bad as this, and as Sorka says, they can often, someone with Huntington's can often be mistaken for someone drunk. But I want to move away from the movement side of things, because I think it's historically been too much of the focus, and that's why when it used to be called Huntington's chorea, when it was first described, we now call it Huntington's disease, because we know that it has this triad of symptoms, this motor dysfunction, but also behavioural and the psychiatric side of things, and the cognitive thinking problems. But still, in research, we use this the motor symptoms to diagnose people officially, because there's so much variability in the psychiatric and behavioural side of things. We have this unified Huntington's disease rating scale, and a clinician or a specialist neurologist or doctor will assess someone and give a diagnostic confidence level of 4, which means a 99% confidence that these are motor abnormalities that are unequivocally Huntington's disease. And they assess this with a total motor score, which has these separate sections of different motor, finger tapping, eye movements, and they're based on this rating of 0 to 4 for each component. And we also have this functional capacity, total functional capacity, or TFC, and that's how clinicians, once someone is diagnosed, rate someone from early to moderate and advanced stages based on these kind of questions about how can you still work, can you do your finances, can you take care of yourself at home and do chores. And there's also some cognitive tools that are quite common in part of the UHDRS, like the symbol digit modality score, which is a working memory task, and strip word reading and colour naming. And these are part of kind of the core battery of assessments that are used commonly in Enroll, particularly in Enroll HD. So Huntington's disease was described back in 1872 by George Huntington, and he described it quite accurately then from just observing a few generations of families in Long Island and in New York State, and he was able to describe then that it was a genetic passed down from family to parent to child, that there was the psychiatric and behavioural components, and the movement and writhing, unsettled movements of chorea. And that was around 146 years ago, and a lot's happened since then, and particularly in the last few years, it's quite nice to come today with a lot of there's quite a lot that's happened in the last year in terms of research for HD. But big things have happened between now and then. About 65 years ago was when Watson and Crick first defined the structure of DNA, and that's a huge thing when you know you have a illness that is genetic. Finding the material that makes our genes was a huge moment for the history of Huntington's disease. About 33 years ago, in the mid 80s, is when we get these family associations starting to come up. And then 25 years ago was probably the biggest thing that happened for the HD community until recently. It's the 25th anniversary of when we first found the gene, or the Huntington gene. And obviously this was kind of a huge celebration in the community back then. Everyone thought they were going to cure the disease in 5 years from now and would have a treatment. We're still not quite there yet, but obviously it was a big moment. And this was born from a huge collaboration across the world of 58 scientists and over 12,000 family members who give their samples globally. And that is kind of a statement for the HD community as a whole. We're very collaborative, and as a global community compared to other research communities, it's a really beautiful community to be part of. In all of our conferences and stuff, there's a huge amount of collaboration and huge amount of involvement from family members. I'm not unusual. There's actually quite a lot of researchers that come from HD families, and a lot of them attend our conferences. So this finding of the gene allowed us to know exactly what causes the disease, and Sorka mentioned that, like unlike other illnesses, we don't know the cause, like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. We know with every case of Huntington's disease, it's the same mutation, and this mutation in the Huntington gene leads to this mutant Huntington protein. So you have a gene that is there to make a protein, and we know now that the mutation that causes it is the CAG repeat. So these letters in our DNA are genetic code, that everyone has this repeat of CAGs, but when you have more than 36 repeats, you have the gene for Huntington's, or the mutation for Huntington's disease. And this also is related to how early someone gets the disease. So people with higher repeats, and there's cases of juvenile Huntington's disease who have very, very high repeats. So obviously it doesn't predict it very completely, but there's that relationship. And then this Huntington protein basically goes wrong and starts wreaking havoc to cells. So it starts clumping up and gets sticky in cells and causes things to go wrong. And you can see it this is a picture of actual cells and brain cells in a dish, and you can see the little aggregates of Huntington and then lead into the cell death in the neuron. But as I said, we're actually at an advantage because we know the cause, and it makes us, this is why Ed Weil calls it the most curable, incurable brain disease, because we're much further ahead than Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So it also has allowed us to do a lot of interesting things research-wise and learn a lot about the disease. So a year after we found the disease, the first mouse model of Huntington's disease was created, and made that they could create a mouse model that would grow up and then eventually get sick, similar to the way that human with Huntington's does. About 18 years ago, some clever scientists were able to make a mouse model with a genetic switch, which when the mice grew up, when the switch was on, it would develop Huntington's disease. But when they changed some of the food that it was eating, it allowed the switch to turn off. And then what happened was that the mice got better. So this is some of the first kind of, scientific, basic science evidence that this was something that we could do to help and help the prognosis of Huntington's, although that was just a mouse. And since then, we've now know a lot more about what Huntington does. It's involved in lots of different pathways, which means there's all these different targets for therapeutics that are currently under investigation by many people around the world. There's been over 100 clinical trials in Huntington's disease, but unfortunately only 2 drugs have been licensed for Huntington's disease, and this is this drug tetrabenazine, which is specifically for this chorea movement, helps slow down some of those involuntary movements, and then this new drug Austedo, which is called tetrabenazine, which is basically like a heavier molecule of the tetrabenazine, so it lasts longer in the body, but still just for the movements. Um, just to highlight, there's a good resource on the Journal of Huntington's Disease called the Huntington's Disease Clinical Trials Corner. My boss, Ed Wild, and my colleague, Philippe Rodriguez, has started doing this, and it's going to be a regular, I think, quarterly or 3 times a year. They'll summarise the current ongoing clinical trials. Currently, there's 13 ongoing drug trials, six invasive non-drug therapy trials, and 9 non-invasive drug trials. So there's a lot happening. Unfortunately, not in Ireland, which is frustrating. So I some people here might have heard about gene silencing if you're involved with Huntington's disease, but if you're new to it, this is kind of what you might get a lot of your participants and patients talking about, because it's been big in the news a lot. Gene silencing, or what we like to call Huntington lowering, and this is because what we're trying to do is reduce this bad protein, this Huntington protein. And as I said before, we've got a gene that is the instructions to make this protein, but it's a bit more complicated than that in our actual biology. Our cells keep our genes tight into the nucleus of the cell where we can't do any damage to it. And then to make the protein, these instructions need to be kind of transcribed into a new copy that gets taken out to the factory part of the cells where the proteins are made. But this allows us an avenue for treatment. So this Ionis Pharmaceuticals came up with a drug called Ionis HTTRX, which is an antisense oligonucleotide, which basically just means it's a single-stranded, chemically modified piece of DNA, and they can cleverly genetically or chemically modify it so it binds specifically to the Huntington message, and that binding really leads to that message being degraded or destroyed, which then subsequently leads to less of the Huntington protein. So about 13 years ago, they were able to do this in a mouse model, and the mouse got better. So kind of evidence that this could be a potential therapeutic for HD patients. And about 3 years ago, this particular drug, HTTRX, went into the first human clinical trials, and we've just had the results this year, which I'll go on to say. So this is a weird kind of drug that I can't, because it's DNA based, it's not something that you can take as a pill. The acid in the stomach and different enzymes would destroy the DNA, so it has to be we need it to get to the brain, so it needs to be injected by intrathecal injection, which just means through a lumbar puncture, the insertion into the lower part of the spine, trying to get the drug directly to the central nervous system and into the brain. It was a safety study, and what we call in clinical trial development a multi-ascending dose study. So what they do is start with an extremely low dose, because this is the first time this kind of drug has been tested in humans, and it's the kind of drug that has a big risk because it'll stick around, and we don't know if it's going to have any serious side effects, and it's not something. So the first people that were testing this are real, true heroes. They're doing this not for themselves, but for the Huntington's community together. But they start with a small dose and a few number of people, check that safe, then they go on to the next dose and some more, and once at each stage of those they confirm that each of those are safe, then they went to the final dose. And about a year ago, we had an announcement from Ionis saying that the drug was safe and well tolerated, and they had started, or were planning to start, an open label extension, which is now ongoing. 9 months ago, some people might have noticed many news articles and press releases in the 11th of December and last year, all about the results, or the top line results of this trial. And what came out, that Roche, who had been in partnership with Ionis Pharmaceuticals from the start, had agreed to exercise their option to license. So they were taking over the licensing of this drug because of the results of the trial, and confirming that it was safe and tolerable, and that this was the particular exciting thing, that there was dose-dependent reductions of mutant Huntington was observed, and this is the kind of figure that made a lot of people tear up in a lot of conferences. Why it's so exciting is this is basically a proof of concept that this drug was doing what it was supposed to do. It was designed to lower this drug in the nervous system, or lower this protein, the bad protein in the nervous system, and we see at these top doses that it did do that. And quoting Frank Bennett from Ionis, that the amount of lowering exceeded their expectations based on their models, and we can see that what this graph is showing you is that even after the dosing regime, which was over 4 months, the levels were still going down, which means that they still had more to go. So hopefully in longer term treatment they could get the levels lower. We still don't know if this is going to be clinically beneficial. This was a very small study, 46 patients, and a quarter of them were on placebo, and a lot of them weren't on a therapeutic dose. They did do some like post-hoc analysis to see if any of the lowering of Huntington was related to any of the clinical changes, and they saw some association with motor score, or decreased motor score, and one of the cognitive tests. But again, this was not a trial that was testing for safety. So what's coming up in the next kind of year or a few years? So the open label extension of this study, so everybody who was in the phase 1, phase 2 trial is now in an open label extension for a year. So everyone is now getting the drug at either monthly or bi-monthly dosing. So it's providing more information and helping Roche now plan the next phase of the trial. So Roche, as I said, have taken over the drug, and it's now called RG6042, not as sexy as Ionis HTTRX. And we're waiting on the official publication of the trial results at the end of this year. And the big question is for a lot of patients is, when is the big trial? When is this pivotal or efficacy trial going to begin? And that is now been announced to start early next year, 2019. These are some pictures stolen off of Twitter of HD Buzz showing Roche's timeline of events. So we've got the open label extension, which is ongoing, and they mentioned this HD natural history study, which I'll explain in a minute, of 100 participants for 15 months. And then the pivotal phase 3, which will be over 25 months, and over 660 patients worldwide will be in that study. And that will be the big trial to see, does this drug help slow Huntington's disease down? The natural history study is trying to get some when we say natural history, we want to understand how different things change in the disease with either drug. So there's not enough information that we don't have enough information about the cerebrospinal fluid that we take as some of the measurements to assess whether the drug's working. So this is to recruit people for a period of time to see how they change without the drug, and then once they've been in that study, they will then go into an open label extension when they will get the drug. So the phase 3 trial is called Generation HD1, and that's been taken from global evaluation of efficacy and safety of Roche Genentech antisense oligonucleotide for Huntington's disease. So quite catchy. I think Generation HD probably is a bit of a stretch where they got that from. So this is going to be a worldwide study in the Europe and in Canada and America, and I think South America. There'll be early to moderate stage patients, and there'll be 3 kind of dosing groups. Of some people will get a lumbar puncture injection every 2 months, some will be every 1 month, and half of these people will be on placebo. So a lot of our patients we have people ringing us up every week being like, can I get in these trials and can I get on this in this treatment? But not everyone realizes what that kind of commitment is to be in these trials. This is it's not just the dosing visits, there's a screening and all these other visits that they have to go through, and it's a lot of lumbar punctures that's going to be 24 lumbar punctures for people over 2 years. So it's a huge commitment, and as clinicians and the doctors need to be very careful of how they manage expectations of these therapies. But even if people don't get in the trials, which unfortunately it's unlikely that Ireland are going to be one of the sites at this rate, because we don't have enough research or specialist clinics. But we're hoping to get things in place for after. Um, so there are other options if this drug doesn't work. So this is kind of an example of genetics, where you get from how genetics works is you get a copy of you get 2 copies of every gene that you have, and one from each parent. And with Huntington's disease, you'll get one bad copy. If you do get the disease, you'll get one bad copy from your affected parent, and that's it in pink here. And this drug that I just mentioned is not specific to which copy it's lowering. So it's lowering both the good Huntington protein as well as the bad one. So there's this company, Wave Life Sciences, which have developed very similar drugs, but they can target the bad copy itself and only lower it. So this might, if there's problems in lowering the good protein, then these will come in. And there's other companies that are working on different techniques to either target this message, Huntington message, or also go directly to the gene itself and modify it. So a lot of work is ongoing and a lot of other drug companies in the pipeline. So the Wave Life Sciences have already started their phase 1 trial, and they're testing out 2 drugs at the same in parallel. And there's some sites opening in the UK and Scotland. I'm not sure. I don't think Ireland will be in it, but this is in America as well. So there's also, I think it's important for you guys to know what other networks globally there is. The Huntington Study Group is a network of professionals and clinicians and association or family members in America. CHDI is a huge foundation. It's a charitable foundation, almost like a non-profit drug company that is designed specifically for Huntington's disease therapeutics, and they are kind of had their foot and hand in basically most or nearly all the research worldwide, and really help us collaborate together, and also provide a lot of funding that have made us kind of more heavyweight than we should be compared to other diseases, based on how rare we are. We've got the European Huntington's Disease Network as well, which links up all the European Association, like Huntington's Association, as well as the research members, and they offer. I just went to the European Huntington's Disease Network plenary meeting a week or 2 ago in Vienna, but it's a great opportunity for training and research, and they fund a lot of people to come. HD Buzz is an excellent resource for research, and